I don't really get much louder than this unless you get me going.
This is true. If someone subs, then, there's you have a very standard sub voice.
Yeah,
Whenever
yeah.
someone comes on in and renews their subscription, you're like, "And true, coming on down with the sub. Thank you." It's a very you have a pattern, almost a rhythm
Yeah.
to it.
I'm
Right.
I'm
So,
just chilled though.
not default Dan, just chill Dan. As always, I must ask you then formally, if you're good, I'm good, sir.
Good man.
All right, I guess that means we should hop right into it, figure out what we're talking about today on the impromptu fly, and say, welcome. Welcome on into the Snapback Podcast, where you snap and we snap back. For those who do not know, my name is Guest, also known as ItsGuestGaming, and once again, as always, joined with the lovely, very dark today, super high definition as I look at my new monitor, Default Dan. How you doing, good sir?
Doing good, man. I don't. Now that you're saying that, I don't know why it looked
I've made you
so
paranoid.
dark. There we go.
There you go.
There we go.
Ah,
Little
now we
lighter.
can see your lovely, short, regularly shaped beard at this point now, finally.
Yes.
You decide
Back,
you gave in, you've gone out in public officially now?
back. Yeah, back to the normal days. The wife said the Wolverine look isn't gonna happen. So
Yeah, there's a certain amount of professionalism, associated with the Wolverine look, and there's a
yeah,
limit. So
yeah,
I'm glad Default Danielle officially convinced you, man. So welcome back
yeah,
to the
yeah.
dark side.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
of the short beard club.
Oh yeah.
Because
Oh yeah.
I mean, yes, you are known for the incredibly long beard, but right now you look
Yeah.
like a well-tailored lumberjack. So
Yeah.
it's a good mix for you. Um,
Yeah. Have to look clean every now and then. Have some different job interviews, opportunities, things like that for the
ooh,
real job. So
yes,
you know,
big
had to,
fancy
had to
man with the
also
real job.
yeah, had to clean it up just a little bit for those. And then once I get the job, that's when you can continue to grow it out slowly, and they don't really
Yeah,
notice. So
yeah. Well, I mean, they notice when they look back at your company ID photo and they
yeah.
see 1 foot less hair on there. It's like, hey, wait a minute here. What happened to you, Britt? Like, all right, so let's dive into it because this is going to be a short and sweet episode today because there are a couple of
Yeah,
obvious topics I want to touch on, and one
absolutely.
that I don't think we have done a good enough job, I guess we could say, focusing on right before the big tournament for Snap.fan, which is the
Yeah.
Snap.fan Open. That will be happening if you're listening to this on Friday when this episode premieres. It is happening tomorrow on Saturday. If you're listening to this on
Mhm.
Saturday morning, you better hurry up because registration is going to close because the event is about to start because
Yeah.
registration will officially close at official start time for the
Mhm.
event, which will be noon Eastern Standard Time. So you can check in 30 minutes before, but you could register anytime up before that. So we're going to talk about
Yeah.
those decks, some tourney prep ideas, things to note. I want to talk about the new event. Speaking of events, that was surprise announced by Marvel Snap while we were live on Wednesday Night Snap. We're going to talk about
Yeah.
Conquerors and also just our thoughts on Legion, which is the
Yeah.
direction I kind of want to start the conversation today because Legion, we touched briefly on it, but I didn't want to go too deep into it because we need to have something to talk about here for the podcast. But
Yeah. Yeah.
Legion, I am pleasantly surprised
Yeah.
with what has happened over the last couple of days when it comes to the conversation around Legion. Because, I mean, we had the whole episode on it, which is, Legion isn't OP. That was the
Yeah.
name of the last episode. And now we're sitting in this odd position, looking at Legion again, saying, hold on a second here. Did we miss something? How did we forecast this wrong? Because I wouldn't say that Legion is necessarily OP,
Yeah.
but I would say that I do think Legion is pretty damn good.
Yeah, I would agree with you at certain levels, right? Like, and I've kind of made this comparison a few times where Legion's really good when he's really good. So I'm not saying he's comparable to Galactus, but I will say he's in my mind in the same world as Galactus. And when I say that, I mean that you build your deck, you put Galactus in. You try to build your deck to where if you don't get Galactus, it can still do something, right? Like you have your destroy mechanics, you have your different things like that, your Nimrod, whatever you're doing. But if you get them, it can be lights out in a game if it has the right setup for them, right? And so I feel like Legion is in that same world to where if the right location's there, you just take it over. If you've got the Storm plus Legion combo and they haven't really done anything, you just win the game, right? Like there's certain aspects of them that make him feel so good. And I think the other thing that makes Legion feel really good right now is Magic. Because Magic
Yeah.
went from a 5 to a 3, she's in every deck because you can throw random 3 drops in any deck. And so you're seeing so many Magics in there to where they're predicting they have a turn 7, and then literally on turn 6, you're playing Legion and ending the game. And there's so many games I've won where it's just that. It doesn't really matter what the location is. You're just getting rid of Limbo, just like a Wanda or, a Rhino or whatever would have done for you. So I think right now Legion feels even better than he probably is because of that Magic play right now. And again, I'm not saying he's bad. I am saying he's good, but I think he looks slightly better than he normally does right now because of that. And because a lot of people are still not prepared for a Legion. They're not looking at some of these locations. And again, there's some games just the right locations are there and he's just amazing. Whether it's, Savage Land or whatever. And it's just like, oh, they haven't played into Savage Land yet.
Yeah.
Boom. Now you can't. Like, there's those types of plays that just end up being ridiculous with him. And I think that that's where it's like, okay, he's really good, but I would agree with you. He's not OP, but I do put him probably in the B tier, probably a high B tier. He's a pretty flexible card. His stat line's pretty good, and I've liked him so far.
I guess the other thing with Legion, to me that I found really interesting as I started to play with him and I started to look at the location control mechanic that he brings to the game.
Yeah.
Many of us obviously were thinking, okay, once we got that confirmation the day beforehand, which is what prompted us to talk about it on Monday, the notion that, okay, we can shut down the game on turn 5 because you
Yeah.
can just go ahead and flood it on, go for Storm on 4, Legion on 5. The game is practically over, minus maybe movement or Jeff the Baby Land Shark. That's it.
Yeah.
I think as I've played with him more and more and more, I think we're also, as just a community in general, I think a lot of us are thinking about him a little bit too linear in that specific aspect, where
Yeah.
it's either you're going to play into Storm or don't play into Storm. And the thing
Mhm.
that I've actually liked about Legion more has been just having him there as a location control mechanic for turn 5 or 6, depending on, the situation, just depending on
Yeah.
whatever is on the board. It's not about canceling limbo or flooding. It's about, or extending flooding in that case. It's
Yeah.
about just general location control the same way you would play Rhino, where you're just trying to
Yeah.
disable it. Except this is, in my opinion, Rhino Plus. This brings,
Yeah.
Rhino's just trying to negate everything. And we saw, and we see it pretty regularly too, I should say. Whenever we have a featured location that we just don't like, people will play Rhino more. And the couple of days after Legion's premiere, many people were playing Rhino just as a preventative measure to
Mhm.
cancel out Legion's extension of Storm because everybody and their sister was playing the Storm combo or the
Yeah.
Magic combo or trying to play the Magic combo and wanting to try to play around it if they could.
Yeah.
I feel like Legion's home hasn't actually been found yet. I feel that he's going to have a home in a good stats style deck where instead of Storm, he's just a solid 5/8 that gives you a surprise based on the locations for a little bit of control earlier on that start of turn 6 than people were necessarily expecting. Like you talked about with the Savage Lands, with the Raptors popping up onto the board. Filling out the
Yeah.
board with Raptors on turn 6 because you've got that lockdown, that's a big play. Like a really big brain play to bring to the game because you have a location duplicator like Legion can bring to the game. We see it all the time now with the squirrel. There's, as we called it, there's going to be great YouTube moments from this. There are YouTube shorts that focus on Legion bringing out, an ungodly amount of squirrels and locking down the
Yeah.
board. I think Legion's home hasn't been found yet, and it may end up to be just a general location control as a 5 cost. It could be in maybe the archetype that's doing incredibly well right now, which is the 5 cost variation of ongoing Thanos. Maybe there's
Yeah.
something along those lines.
And I'm gonna send you a deck. This is off off the cuff because this is the deck I've been using.
Bring it on.
Want to give a big shout out to Alex. So again, we'll talk about this in a minute with Conquerors, but this deck was made by Alex, who's competing over there, and it's insane. It's insane with Legion because it's the Infinite She-Hulk combo with Kang with Legion, and it works so well. Now it is a tough
Nice.
deck to pilot. Like you have to be in the weeds with the deck. So I'll go through the cards in just one second. You have to be in the weeds with the deck, so you have to play it a lot to really understand how it works. But once you figure it out, it is crazy. Now I've gone up against it a couple times in Conquest as well, so just be prepared. There's other people playing it too, but it's such a good deck. So the cards you're looking at in your 1-drop slot, you have Sunspot and Nebula. Again, you're going to throw those down if you need to skip turns because again, we've already said She-Hulk and Infinite. Going to get some value out of that. You've got in your 2-drop slot, you've got Spider Ham, always a good card, right? Taking down their 6-drop, something like that. It's also making them think that they may have that extra turn if they need it. Armor and Jeff are your other 2 drops. Again, like we talked before, you're going to shut something down or whatever when it comes to Legion. Jeff is the card you want out there. That armor, again, going to protect your big drops towards the end of the game. When you get into your 3 drops, you're getting that magic. So just like I said, it's going to extend that turn 7. So I'll explain that play in a minute, but it also gives them a false comfort of having a turn 7, and Legion can take that away if you decide that you need to. You've got Cosmo. Cosmo, again, we've talked about him kind of falling out of the meta in the past, but he's back. He's back and he's needed in a lot of the stuff. You can, catch their Legion if they're trying to do something. You can catch a lot of these Shuri plays that are running around, things like that. So, Cosmo's a good card. Once you get past that, you got Moon Girl in the 4-drop slot. Moon Girl is going to be able to double up your cards. You're really wanting to hit She-Hulk with this, potentially, a Sunspot or something like that. Into the 5s, you have Legion that we talked about, as well as Kang. So Kang is one of those cards we've always
Yes.
said is not a great card. He's very hard to say I'm going to spend 6K tokens, but he did just show up, in the spotlights and stuff if you wanted to get him. This is where he shines as Conquest. And this is where he shines with Legion. So you can look at what they're doing on turn 5 before you play Legion. You can look at what they're doing on turn 6 and understand, okay, can I, if I have magic out, can I skip turn 6 because they're not really playing anything crazy? Playing them turn 6 to figure out, are they playing, or are they not playing anything? Are they skipping turns? Are they doing whatever to where I need to turn 6 Legion to end the game and remove that limbo? So a lot of things you can do with Kang in this deck. So he's really good to be able to get that information on turn 5 or 6 or even 7 to understand what they're doing before you lay down, your big cards. And so with that being said, you've had She-Hulk and Infinite kind of rounding out this deck. And so with a magic out there, you skip turn 6 and now you have a free She-Hulk plus an Infinite. If you use Moon Girl, you can have 2 She-Hulks and an Infinite coming down on turn 7. So a lot of different plays you can do there. If you don't have your magic, you can skip 5 and you have a She-Hulk that's 1 drop. Potentially if you have Moon Girl, coming down earlier, maybe you have 2 She-Hulks or something like that. So all in all, you got Sunspot, Nebula, Spider-Ham, Armor, Jeff, Magic, Cosmo, Moon Girl, Kang, Legion, She-Hulk, and Infinite. It's a really good deck, a really thought out deck. But like I said, you need to play it a couple times to understand how to use Kang. You need to make sure if you've never used the Moon Girl combo, you need She-Hulk, you need whatever in your first 3 cards. You don't really need more than 4 cards in your hand when you're using Moon Girl. little things to kind of think about. But I've really enjoyed the deck. I've got a couple gold tickets off of it. I'm in the current first run of my gold tickets. See if I can get some infinite tickets. Because I've just been, I don't know, I've been sleeping a little bit on Conquest in general this season. So
You and me both. I have been ladder sweaty for the last several weeks just because I had been sitting between 93 and 97 for 2 weeks now. And it has been an
mhm,
unbelievably frustrating moment. I want to play into Conquest, but I am so damn close. So I'm gonna try this
yeah,
in ladder 2 because I've seen this deck. I've seen several
mhm,
people pilot this deck. I've seen some of the other Conquerors outside of
yeah,
Alex pilot this deck,
yeah,
and they could not pilot it. But if you
mhm,
can pilot it, it's been doing really well. It is the number one performing deck with Legion right now,
yeah,
according to several different websites, including Snap.fan. And it is a really strong combination. So I like the idea of this deck because it gives you the flexibility of exactly what I was talking about, which in this style of deck, it's not necessarily about guaranteeing turn 7 with Magic and Legion. Legion can actually create that variant in there where you
mhm,
can say, I need to cut this short. Let me do the location control, fill up the lanes with everything else that's not necessary, and then just focus on exclusively, a She-Hulk combo, followed by, Sunspot for 5 power. There's a
yeah,
couple of different options in which you could utilize it. And I really like
yeah,
it. I really, really like this deck. I think
yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
I think I need to play it
Yeah.
more, to be honest.
And it's fun because like you said, sometimes and you don't have to pull it up, but I sent you a screenshot of like one of the games where one of the locations was Monster Metropolis. And so on the final turn, being able to play and kind of sneak this in with a Legion to change all locations to that location and just squeak out a couple of the locations by 1 point. And this is against that Thanos ongoing deck that's running around everywhere else, and they had a lot on the field controlling. And it's like, oh, well, here's Legion. And all of a sudden, that +3 on all the locations, just kind of turned, the tide. So to your point, it is understanding the locations, reading through them. Maybe it's hitting Crimson Cosmos, right? Like bounce is kind of
Yeah.
been tamed. We don't see bounce a lot, but I couldn't imagine like this would be the card and that location specifically that just like says, okay, bounce, you're not
Mm,
playing. Like you're done for the rest of the game. Go ahead
right.
and forfeit, whatever.
Even
So,
Thanos. Even
yeah,
Thanos it controls just because of all the stones.
yeah.
And you still play a
So
lot of twos with the Thanos combos right now. So yeah, if Crimson Cosmos comes up, Legion, that should be like number one prio. Get
yeah,
his ass down.
yeah.
But Legion has been pleasantly surprising in that aspect because I feel like we all have to, not all, but many of us have to chew our cud where
Yeah.
we thought it would be meme central. And then the first 24
I mean,
hours
it still
basically
is.
was. Well, no, but
Yeah.
think about it. The first 24 hours was straight up meme central. We were just
Yeah.
having all of the storms, all of the magics, and that was the primary use for it was just a load of this or a load of this, and that's what you're aiming for. And then 48 hours, 72 hours pass, and we start seeing the techiness as exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I alluded to the techiness of Legion as a surprise or necessary game turner on turn 5 or 6,
Yeah.
not just playing limbo flooding for turn 5
Yeah.
type combos. Like, that's where I think he'll shine. So, yes, as we also called, he's going to be great on featured location days where loaded up in certain times. Yes,
Yeah.
could be a great cancel out card. We run we run the featured location series on Snap.fan, and I always have for certain locations, as long as you can cancel it out, I always have, or just, play Storm and Magic and all these other cards that'll cancel it out. Well, now Legion's going to be thrown into there depending on the style of location where it's not an ongoing. It's a let me
Yeah.
just get rid of this on turn 5 and it will have an effect. Something like
Yeah.
canceling out Onslaught Citadel, just to use that one. That's always a staple reference. It's an
Yeah.
ongoing effect, not because it's an ongoing of ongoings, but you get what I mean.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
like, Legion's going to be a pretty good staple card. And for 3K, if you have the tokens, I saw this question come up a couple times in my chat too. I have 6K. Should I
yeah,
get Legion or should I save for other things? It's getting harder and harder to default say, yeah, save for other things because as a tech card,
yeah.
he's justifiable. I think is the best word for it. He's justifiable at 3K tokens. I don't know if I would justify him at 6K, but
Yeah,
I think
I
at
would agree.
3K, he's a really, really solid value. I just don't know up to what point he's a solid value. And he's
Yeah,
hot
I
right
mean,
now, but let's see what he's like next week.
yeah, and I think when it comes back to like the tokens and stuff like that, because I get the question a lot too, and it's hard to answer now because you don't get tokens as often, especially if you're
Yeah.
free to play and things like that. But I mean, at this point, I don't think anybody, unless it's high evolutionary, like I don't think anybody should spend 6K tokens on anything anymore. But look and see, and that's the important thing. Like over on Snap.fan, you can see the schedule. You can see every card
Yeah.
that's in spotlight from now until September. So like go look at the week and identify what week makes the most sense to open your caches and all that kind of stuff to figure out should I purchase this. Like that's my biggest
Yeah.
suggestion is go look at that because if there's a card you like and it's already in one of these spotlights somewhere, just wait. Don't spend your stuff on it. But somebody like Legion, I mean, he's not in the spotlights for a long time and it's only 3K. And I think most of the time you're going to want to purchase something in 3K. We know that these series drops, right, are random. Like
Yeah.
yes, they will happen again. We don't know when they'll happen. We don't know what cards they're touching. It could
Yep.
be literally two cards, one card that they do it. It's all flexible now. So it's one of those things when you look at it, Legion just dropped. He's not getting dropped to any other series anytime soon. So like I do think he would be a good investment, but it does need to be your play style because I don't feel like he's a card that goes in every deck.
Right.
And kind of going
Agreed.
back to that tech piece, if he was a 3 drop, then yes, I think he can go in any deck, right? But the fact that he's a 5 drop, he'll go in probably he'll go in right now 60% of decks, but I guarantee you after we get over this novelty, he'll drop back down just like we see with a lot of 5 drops. He'll probably be in 30% of decks. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
I think he's good. There's still the memes. I mean, I've seen
Yeah.
so many rickety bridge stuffs, right? So like
Yes. The
Rick
Rickety
into
Bridge
rickety
combo.
bridge, and then I know I did that the night he dropped. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
rickety bridge, yeah, and I threw him out there, and then on turn
Just
6,
to
I just
say
threw
I
down.
did it. Ha ha ha
Well,
ha.
I threw down one thing on every location on turn 6. I'm like, well, if they can't, like, I
Yeah.
win if they can't do the same thing, and so I think that there's still those types of, and again, they're memey, but they're,
Yeah.
you're thinking through it. So
They're
yeah,
semi
overall,
big
he's
brain.
good.
They're some size of brain we just haven't decided.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, so maybe Legion makes an appearance next week in
Mhm.
Conquerors because you started to kind of allude to some of the
Yeah.
commentary for Conquerors, and I wanted to touch on a couple of things. So for those who do not know what is going on with that, we got an announcement on Wednesday. Yeah, it was Wednesday
Yeah.
during Wednesday Night
This is
Snap
Wednesday.
where there's a new event
For an
being
event that's
hosted. Yeah,
Tuesday,
for an
like,
event. Yeah, exactly.
why
We
why didn't
got
they
an
give more lead time or whatever?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe. But they about a week from it, they started to announce, "Hey, we've got a new event for creators. We've chosen 20 creators from the Marvel Snap Creator Program to create a conquest-focused event called Conquerors." Now,
Yeah.
the event has a wide variety of creators, which I'll talk about in a second.
Yeah.
It's going to be on their own live stream, twitch.tv/Marvel
Mhm.
Snap. It's hosted by Cozy and Dexter. And then there are 20 different creators where you can go. I'll have the link to the website in the YouTube description as well.
Yeah.
You can vote for the creator who you think will win. And by voting, you'll get 250 credits. But if you guess correctly, there's an exclusive variant, a Spectrum variant, that you have a chance to win. So only those who choose the winning potential
Ash.
person will actually get. Shoot.
Yeah, and
What's up?
there's a I know you hate me when I say it, there's an asterisk on
Yes.
that. So
Yes, exactly.
that variant
I
eventually
know.
at some point
Yep.
will be available. So just
Yes.
letting you guys know.
Yeah.
I mean, that could
But
be 6
months.
months. Yeah, that could be 6 months from now, that could be a year from now. But
Yeah.
just I know everybody's gonna be like, well, what if I can't get it? What if I guessed wrong? Because it's
Yeah.
funny.
People
It's
freak
funny
out.
to think about, well, it's funny to think about the general public, right? Like we know these
Why is
creators.
that
We
funny?
we watch. No, no, no. I'm talking about the fact that like we know these creators. We interact with them. We see their
Yeah.
streams. We see their YouTube stuff. But when I'm on the Facebook groups and stuff like that, like I've been seeing post after post of like, who do I pick? Because I don't know who any of these people are. And if you think about like general
Yeah.
public people, they don't go to Twitch to watch other people play and things like that. So I do find it funny of just like all these people now kind of coming out of the woodworks of like, I just want the variant. Who do I pick? You tell me who
Yeah.
the best person is. And it's like,
Right. Well,
here's the thing. I don't know. We don't I can't tell you who to pick because I don't even know what this tournament is outside of they're
yeah.
playing Conquest. So, you
So
know,
a lot of, and here's the thing too, it's not even just the aspect of I don't know who these people are because they don't watch content. Even those who watch
yeah,
content, if you're listening to this podcast, chances are you don't know probably 6 or 7 of these creators, because the credit I have to give to Marvel Snap, the Marvel Snap team on this, is they truly went international, right? So,
yeah,
for example, right off the bat, as I'm looking through the list, I see, I can never pronounce his name, and it's a Brazilian creator too. Reliquia Nerd, right?
yeah,
Or a Helikia Nerd, I should say. Like, he's a Brazilian content creator. The Fishu, he's a French creator. Atrix. People don't realize he's the #1 Twitch streamer
yeah,
internationally. It's not, KM Best or Jeff Hoagland or Dara or Dexter. It's not. It's this Italian creator, Atrix, who has like a
it's
23K
Binks.
summoner score.
It's Binks.
He's it's not even Binks, no. It's like
I don't
huge,
know.
absolutely huge. So,
I'd like
but
to see
my
his numbers when you look at what Binks also gets on YouTube, but
yeah,
when
no,
he's
I can tell
live.
you, confidently, it's a Atrix, whatever. My point to all of this, and correct me if I'm wrong in the comments if I said the incorrect region on all of these, as I, was quickly going through their YouTube content for those that I was less familiar with.
Yeah,
The point I'm making on this is that Marvel Snap said, hey, we recognize APAC, we recognize the EU, we recognize South America, we recognize North America. We know
yeah,
where our views are, we know where our content is, we know where it's being ingested and how, both YouTube and Twitch, because some of these creators are YouTube exclusive, some of them are Twitch exclusive, some of them do both. So
yeah,
it's cool to see that diversity on this very first event that they're
yeah.
hosting of this style, trying to, in my opinion, promote Conquest in a different way.
Absolutely. Well, and I think that I'm like I'm struggling with the event in general, right? So again, big props to everybody who was invited because these guys are huge in the community. They get the views,
Yes.
they get whatever, right? So it's very obvious that they also looked at okay, who's getting the most eyes and views and whatever because ROI, all of that. I get it. That's
Of
where it's
course.
at. But what
Of
I'm
course.
confused with it is okay, is this event going to be something that happens more than once? Is this, and these are the questions I'm
Right.
kind of putting out there to Second Dinner, if any of those guys are listening. Is the fact of like, okay, is this going to be a regular thing? Is it always going to be a conquest thing because it's called Conquerors? I assume it is.
Yeah.
And that's fine if it is. Um, when you look at this list, like we're missing some names, and maybe they couldn't participate, maybe the dates didn't work out or something like that. But I mean, like you have like Lammy. Lammy has like I don't know 6 infinite like avatars. Like
Yeah.
there's some names on here that I'm surprised that didn't make it. When you look at like uh s- again, I don't want to use the word skill level, but I look at the fact that I know Lammy is known for
Proven
this type of stuff.
experience.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so it's interesting, how it's done. The other questions that are out there are like, okay, what does this look like? Is it the first one to an infinite ticket? Is it like we used to do cube rushes where you have X hours and it's however many, I said infinite ticket, but you know what I mean, like infinite border or
Yeah.
whatever, or is it X hours? Are they having to start from proving grounds to work all the way up? Did they already just have infinite gold tickets and they're just running the infinite bracket? Like that's the problem I have is like
Yeah.
we don't have any of that information to even make guesses of okay, who am I picking? Because if it's just wins, then maybe
Yeah,
you take the stress out of it and you're just improving grounds the whole time.
the-
I assume they're on their own server, right? And
that's
it's
what I was
just them
literally
competing
gonna say
against.
next
So
is, are they playing each other, or are they in their own
yeah,
server that Marvel Snap hosts, or are they playing the general public? Because then you've got what we'll call a different type of RNG
yeah.
to factor in there too. But
Because
I,
this is Tuesday. This is Tuesday when the infinite bracket will be open in the general public of the game. So, I mean,
Mhm.
there is a potential that they are just on the main server
Yeah,
going at. I hope not. I hope not. I want to see these
I
guys
hope not
facing each
too.
other, but
Yeah, because
uh,
that would be, to be completely honest, watching them face each other would be much better content, yet alone
yeah,
more exciting to say the minimum. So we'll
yeah,
see. We'll see. But the event is supportive of the idea that Marvel Snap wants to dive into events,
hmm,
and not just Discord events, because I love Gaz and he puts up a lot of great events on Discord. If you haven't participated in any of the Marvel Snap competitions that they do on Friday nights, for example, highly
yeah,
recommend it. But I'm talking generically, that Second Dinner is open to the idea. They've created an event here. They've put marketing towards an event. They put production towards an event. They built
yeah,
this, website, this integrated idea of voting for your creators. Marvel Snap is promoting the creator program by doing this. They are influencing people into the idea that it's not just a game, there's a community here.
yeah,
And that speaks very heavily to me when it comes to tournaments. Because yes, this is not a what we'll call a traditional tournament. This is not a general public can sign up and participate like what we host for the Snap.fan
right,
Open.
right,
I'm talking about the idea that they're looking at these events finally. They're saying, even though we have to create X, Y, and Z to host it, we're going to bring eyes to this event as a community event. That at no point,
hmm,
as I check through everything outside of one of the words in the YouTube video, it's never really mentioned as a tournament except inter tournaments between them, which is what makes me allude towards the notion that it is most likely a
yeah,
private server, but we're still looking for that information. We'd like to know that because some people are very competitive and want to get a right prediction. I know you and I have not
yeah,
put our predictions in, even though if it's what I think it is, I know who I'm picking.
yeah,
Which I'll say in a minute. But I think for me, this is a step in the right direction, but it is like one toe in the right direction for Second Dinner of what
yeah,
a large portion of the community would love to see, which is tournament, Second Dinner integration and contribution.
yeah,
And I could see other aspects to it. If this isn't on the agenda, but I'm just going to sidebar this to let people digest this. The survey that is out on mobile that you go to your news
yeah,
section and take a look at it and fill it out, please. Let the community know. One of the questions had a secondary pop up where it asked you, what would you like to see? And one of the options was a draft mode
yeah,
to check mark of, I'd love to see this. This interests me the most, of seeing this come to the next level of Marvel Snap. And little pieces like this, I'm noticing. And I'm
hmm,
taking note of it because it looks like Second Dinner is truly interested in this progression. They've got the
yeah,
full screen UI coming eventually, whenever that may be. Who knows? It could be 2026. We don't know. But at this point, it's the
yeah,
next release to come from Marvel Snap. We have that confirmed from the devs. But what happens after that? What are they
yeah,
really trying to push towards? And I think they're debating right now how
yeah,
much to dive into this competitive aspect, whether it
yeah,
be
yeah,
using the creators right now, because it is what gets the most eyes on the idea of a Marvel Snap tournament, just to kind of roughly see from the current ingestion model of where we're seeing content, how do people react to this event? How many eyes actually watch this event, whether it's on YouTube,
yeah,
whether it's on Twitch, whatever it is, how many people actually do so? Or is this going to convince them to go the other direction of, well, it didn't turn out the way that we thought it would, So
Yeah.
we're going to focus on just in-game modes and let the community run their own stuff. So I
Yeah.
think
And I
this is
think
the beginning of a tipping point.
Yeah, and I think that this is, in my opinion, Twitch Rivals was pretty well received the other
Yeah,
day when they did it with Snap. Um, Second Dinner was involved in that. I mean, like at whatever level they were involved in that, and so I think that this is
yeah,
their test as well to say, okay, was that just Twitch Rivals, the fact they have a big name and all of that that drove all of that, or was it our creators? Was it our game? And so that's why it's on their Twitch. I think that's why they're kind of dabbling in there to see like, okay,
yeah.
can we pull those same numbers? And if so, okay, bam, there's a world for this. And I think that that's going to be a big test when this drops. So I am curious. You mentioned you've got a pick. What what's your pick when it comes to this? If we find out that this is, I'm going to throw it out there, right? If we find out that this is 1 hour, 2 hours, whatever,
Yeah.
get as many orders or whatever that you can get. Who you going with? Who's your pick out of all these people?
So this one was
And I'm
tough,
gonna make every other
obviously.
creator that you don't pick. I'm gonna make all of them hate you for not picking
That's
them.
the
But
good, good. Bring it on. No. All right. So as I look through the list, without calling out things negatively on any creator, obviously,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
the hard
yeah,
part. As I look through YouTube content, as I look through live streams, and I look through my own knowledge base, several of these creators, in my opinion, are less competition focused than others. Some of them are
hmm
more entertainment focused than others. That's not to say that any of these creators are bad players. What
yeah,
I do think, though, is there is a difference between a really good player and a competitive level player.
yeah.
And for me personally, I think half of these creators could immediately be excluded with that knowledge in mind.
hmm
My pick is Johnson
Okay.
because
That's a
Johnson,
good
I
one. He's a
feel like,
tournament winner.
has both the Marvel Snap and outside of Marvel Snap experience on a competitive level and proven successes. And the
Yeah,
thing is, I think people don't realize how good Johnson is. And I'm
yeah.
going to leave it at that by saying Johnson is my personal pick. Um, have
Yeah.
you made a
I,
decision?
yeah, so I think that's a very good look at it, especially if these guys are competing against each other. If they're only competing against each other, there's none of this RNG. You just get somebody who doesn't know how to play and you get a free win type stuff
Yeah.
because they all know
Hmm.
how to play. But I mentioned him a little bit earlier. I'm gonna go with Alex as that dark horse pick. A lot of
Ooh.
people, aren't expecting him to be at that top level. I mean, again, if you look at his content, he kind of is on that fence of competitive yet, just entertainment with everybody. So I'm gonna pick him only, I've been playing this Legion deck. It's a strong, good deck, and I found it through him, and so I'm gonna kind of put him as my pick. And again, I think all of these guys are incredibly good. I think they all have the same, probability because again, it's still going to be random whoever they get
Yeah.
matched up against, right? So, yeah, I want to put that underdog on my list. I want to pick Alex this particular
Okay.
event.
Those are safe. Those are safe. So that's the prep that we can provide you when trying to make
Yeah,
a prediction. Those are our picks. Those are our reasons why. But there's other prep I want to talk about today too, which is
yeah.
preparing for Saturday. So we'll keep this one short and sweet, just because I don't know what day you're listening to this podcast. Who knows? The tournament may have already happened, and we're going to be getting ready to talk about it on Monday night's recording.
Yeah.
But we have the Snap.fan open on Saturday morning. And we've roughly, briefly, sort of talked about what the Snap.fan open is going to bring to the table based on the last couple of weeks that we've seen with battle arenas, all under the Snap.fan World Championship Series and umbrella of events. And if you haven't seen it, go to communitygaming.io. You'll see the tournament format, $600 prize pool, full FAQ ready there for you to register and join. It's 8 rounds of Swiss cutting into a top 8. So if you get into the top 4, you get a seat at the SnapFan World Championship Series.
Mhm.
Participants who typically have 2 losses are always in the running, but just know you could also gain leaderboard point not leadership, leaderboard points just by participating in 6 of the rounds, no matter how you do. So you get points
Yeah.
for participating in at least 6 rounds, no matter how you do. You get extra points for every win if you have at least 4 wins, and then you get bonus points if you make it obviously into the top 8 as well. So there's lots of different ways in which you can get leaderboard points to get to the SnapFan World Championship Series at the end of this giant adventure that we're going through all of
Yeah.
2023 for the big event in 2024. With what's happening on Saturday, we've seen the rise of Thanos ongoing. Thanks, W. We've
Yeah.
seen the presence of it and how relevant it currently is. We've seen from the last several weekends the rise of Iron Lad, Cosmo. Shang-Chi's always been there in some way, shape, or form. And now, especially with the popularity of Legion, I expect the number to even go up further. Jeff the Baby
Yeah.
Landshark. So, my question to you, good sir, is with this event, how would you recommend preparing for it if you're thinking about competing?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things that you have to know that that Thanos deck is going to be everywhere. It was there at Battle Arena. It was there the week before that. Like, it's a deck that you have to really go in and kind of look at whether. And so when you do that, you have to say, I'm either going to play that deck or I'm going to play a deck that can beat that deck. And so I don't think, in my opinion, Legion has came in and done enough disruption specifically against that deck. He is disruptive. He is a very good card. So maybe you put him in your deck, but I'm not saying he's like a pure counter. Right. So I think you have to just kind of go in, and there's kind of always the 3 paths. You either play the best deck, play the deck that beats the best deck, or you play the deck you're most comfortable with. Those are your
Yep.
3 options for any tournament. And so if there's a deck you play nonstop, you are really good at Patriot, Iron Patriot, whatever,
Yeah.
play it. If that's the deck you play 90% of the time, that's the deck you take because you know it. But I think right now, this kind of like Legion control, high Evo Legion that I've seen kind of running around as well, where you're getting Cyclops down and some of that kind of stuff. Like, I think it's a good deck. I think the high Evo deck that has now morphed into what it is a pretty good deck against the Thanos deck. Or, with Thanos ongoing, like throw in a red skull, or not a red skull, a super scroll or
Yeah.
something like that, and
Hmm.
have fun with stealing what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
Throw in a Killmonger. I don't know why, but Killmonger's disappeared. And this Thanos deck is good, but it does still rely on the stones. So throw a Killmonger on turn 4, take away some of those stones, and now their blue Marvel doesn't look as good. But you gotta do it on 4 before Professor X comes down on 5. So like,
Yeah.
yeah, I would take the deck you're most comfortable with, but I definitely you definitely need to know how to play against that deck because it will be 40% of the meta if I had to guess, at least.
Yeah.
If I had to guess.
I'd say 30 to 40%. I think it'll reduce a little bit, but not
Um,
tremendously. Uh, Me personally, at least. I think that ongoing is right now the archetype to beat.
yeah,
It is the most prevalent and it is the most difficult to navigate around. If you have Echo, you should seriously be considering it.
yeah,
Creating an actual deck around it, that's really tough. But to find an on reveal focused deck that will regularly take down ongoing is also incredibly tough. I think we're going to see a couple of big cards become relevant again. I
yeah,
expect Wave to make a big reappearance again, and I expect it
yeah,
as a Wave on 3 style
yeah,
synergy, not Wave on 5, because a lot of these ongoing decks only need 1 card on the final turn. I'm
yeah,
expecting some other big plays to be incredibly relevant. I expect us to see Enchantress and Rogue make their reappearance again in a much higher
yeah,
volume than they had been previously. Because if Iron Lad's taking ongoings and we're trying to counteract, whether it be maybe not Cosmo for those 2 in particular, which is why I mentioned Echo, but
yeah,
all of these synergies that take away those ongoings are going to be incredibly relevant.
yeah.
I don't
I've been
kn
seeing Rogue pop up because of
Yeah,
the Surfer decks kind of being here
yeah,
and there.
on the edge.
Surfer, yeah, I mean it's kind of like Surfer was coming back a little bit because you had Shadow King with the bounce decks. Now the bounce decks are kind of dead for the most part. So it's like now Rogue
They're back down,
falling into
yeah.
that spot. Like, yeah, I would agree with you. I think there's a lot of answer cards. There's
Yeah.
Cosmos coming up. I've seen Rogue posted a lot on the Facebook groups,
Mhm.
even against like the destroy decks where you're stealing, a
I
null
gotta I
on the
gotta
last
interrupt you
turn.
though. I gotta interrupt you though, because every now and then you do show your age where you don't look on Reddit, you don't look on Twitter, you don't look on
No,
Instagram. Your reference is always the Facebook groups. I always find
I
that entertaining. It's
well,
unique.
that's because like I look at Twitter. I'm on Twitter and I'm
I know, I know.
following a lot of stuff, but I don't feel like I see a lot of random people or random decks on Twitter. I only see the people I follow, which
Yeah,
tend to be the same decks over and over
very true.
between them all,
But
right? Like one person posts it, whereas like Facebook, it's just a group. There's like tons of people, and then I don't know. I Reddit I barely ever get on because of the way it like prioritizes stuff. I'll post something on Reddit and I swear nobody sees it because it just gets buried somewhere else. So.
yeah, maybe. It's like one card different. Look at
Um,
this epicness, and I'm the first to
yeah, yeah,
show it. Like that. Welcome to the
yeah.
community. So,
But I
w-
would before we jump over to the deck of the week, kind of as we're talking about this tournament real quick,
yes,
because I know this is something we were talking about this morning and this week. Like, hey, if you guys are participating or you guys are just interested in becoming part of kind of the team of Snap.fan, you want to be a mod, you want to help out during these tournaments and things like that. We are looking for people to help us out. We've got a lot. I mean, when we get 200 people signed up for these tournaments, there's a lot of mod stuff on the Discord, even on the community gaming website, and things like that. So if you're interested in that, I mean, let
it's
us
good to
know.
have power. Yeah, it's good
Yeah,
to have power. But director default Dan will always have the
yeah,
most.
yeah,
But it's good to have power in these tournaments and be a part of that. So if you are interested, yes, 100%. Let either default Dan, myself know, or go to the Snap.fan page, or I should say, the Discord page, and talk to us there, where we can gladly navigate the idea. Something we are open to. Now,
yeah.
with that said, I just want to shout out the casters who will be broadcasting this event live, which will include Bradzifer, the two of us, Default Dan and ItsGuestGaming, Offbeat, Torrican, Super Tech God, and Matt Trim. We're all going to be there broadcasting at different times, at different intervals throughout the entire day. So whether you're playing or whether you're watching it on twitch.tv, we invite you to come join us and have that conversation with the casters, because it is a two-way conversation and you can share your game
Yeah.
in the Discord as well.
Yep.
I'm going to talk about my deck of the week, though, because I think it's a part of the answer, because I've been trying it in ladder recently. I've been tweaking it slowly and slowly, and I've taken two different ideas and I've hybrided them together. It's taking two of the strongest archetypes right now in the game and trying to find that happy medium in between, because the most popular deck, obviously, we talk about Thanos. W's deck, which has multiple different variations on it at this point, is focused on one specific idea, which is, let me put out the Thanos stones. Let me use Psylocke and the Time Stone to get 5 drops out early, and then have some flexibility to be able to lock down in some way, shape, or form. I wanted to take that idea into a power booster reference. So I have been experimenting with hybriding High Evolutionary into that combination. And I started this adventure yesterday and I settled on this
Yeah.
last night. I'm just calling it the Thevo deck, where it is Wasp, Psylocke, Scorpion, Jeff, High Evo, Thing, Blue Marvel, Devil Dino, Professor X, Claw, A-Bomb, or Abomination, and Thanos. Now, this deck runs five drops,
Yeah.
and it sounds incredibly daunting. But there's two things that really help this deck tremendously. Number one, every single one of those 5 drops can actually get down earlier. And
Yeah.
two, magic is also right now incredibly prevalent. So the deck very often is going up against a turn 7, at least, in my opinion, 35, 40% of the time. And that just becomes a perk. This deck is based on getting those 5 drops out via 2 different mechanics. You've got Psylocke and the Time Stone, which you can play down on turn 3 to pop down one of the 5 drops on turn 4. Or
Yep.
you've got Wasp and Scorpion, reducing the power on the other side of the battlefield, where even if one of them gets 1 reduction on the other side of the battlefield, A-Bomb can drop down on turn 4 also. If you
Yeah.
still couldn't get any of that, Thing then comes to the party, and he can be played on turn 4 to reduce down 2 or 3 cards, where if you get at least 2 of them from Thing to be reduced down, you still have an A-Bomb option at a 3 cost or lower. So
Yeah.
you've got the Soulstone reducing, you've got Wasp reducing, you've got Scorpion reducing, you've got mana coming to the game via Psylocke and the Time Stone. You've got a couple of different ways to cheek into a Professor X also, where then you take the W mechanic of Claw and Blue Marvel and Jeff, where you can still play into that closed off Professor X lane via 3 different mechanics, which is one of the
Yeah.
things I find very interesting, that people, when they play this deck, they'll Professor X on the left lane, and that's like the last possible option with the Professor X in this style of deck, because you're playing Claw, who can only feed to the right.
Right.
So this deck takes multiple different outs of those strong 5 drops, and I removed Spider-Man, which I tried in this deck because I didn't get enough power from it. But once I put in
Yeah.
Abomination and then even Devil Dinosaur as a default, hey, listen, I didn't get enough out there, but I'm still sitting on a bunch of cards. That's a good, easy 5, 15, 13, even 17 if you could play the Time Stone on the final turn 6 also. It has
Yeah.
so many different ways to ramp power wide while also still going tall, because you've got 9 power, 15 power, 10 power Thing. You can technically call a 9 power with the power differential.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good strength in this deck. I've really enjoyed it, and I think it has a lot of competitiveness to it as well.
Yeah. No, I like the deck. I've been seeing Scorpion pop up a little bit more often
Mhm.
when I'm just
Me too.
messing around on ladder as well. Again, don't know if they're bots or not, but he's been popping up. The only card that I feel like I'm missing, and I was kind of looking through the list, I don't see a spot for it unless you're dropping Claw or A Bomb or something like that. Is Cyclops? It's the only one that kind of like
Aha.
stands out, not for the A Bomb play, but more of just the lockdown Professor X. I get that
So
lane.
I
Uh,
had that. It's funny you mentioned
yeah,
Cyclops. I had that in this deck. When I was the very first iteration of it, I was trying Storm and Cyclops, right? Because that's always a great
yeah,
combination. I was trying the Nebula package with that, because that's a great 3 card evolved package for your
yeah,
high evolutionary lockdown. High Evo in this deck is specifically for the affliction aspect, to
yeah,
have that A bomb come out. So if you're doing it as damage over time for lockdown and using the storm combo, Cyclops then absolutely holds value, and you do not run the A bomb package. I took out that package because what ended up happening for me more often than not was I felt like I was wasting mana, because if you're looking to Storm
yeah,
3 Cyclops 4, that's a counterproductive strategy to ramping your Psylocke on turn 3 to get one of your 5 drops down. So
yeah, yeah,
this synergy felt more organic, because the whole goal of, what works right now in the current meta is getting your 5 cost cards out earlier. So
yeah,
by
yeah,
removing Cyclops from it, because you're looking to play Cyclops on curve more often than not, but then it doesn't proc its effect. So if you play it on 4 and then reduce it, the timing and the curve didn't fill out properly. So I
yeah,
removed that Nebula, Storm, and Cyclops package and ended up replacing it with Scorpion, Thing, and A Bomb. And it's been a
yeah,
lot more consistent with a lot more stable power, even if I
yeah,
don't choose to lock down a lane with Professor X. So I
yeah,
did go
yeah.
with it. It's a different high Evo deck at that point
Yep.
versus a Thanos deck, which needs all the lanes open up until turn 4, versus Storm, which is forcing that lockdown to potentially
Yeah.
happen on turn 3. And then you're
Yeah, and
really getting concerned.
it's more of it's less around the storm piece. It's more of like if they play their Jeff on turn 2, you play Cyclops on that lane. It kind of forces them to move their Jeff early, or he's just going to get reduced down. Even if you're still using your mana on curve and it's not doing it, it's the threat that I'm about to -2 this lane. right? Especially
Yeah.
when you get into Magic with the turn 7, you tend to usually always have 1 extra energy, so that last turn is it's, -2 on the lane. So there's a
Right.
lot of guessing games I've seen with Cyclops, even though a lot of people aren't doing, like, every turn I'm gonna save 1 energy just to make him proc, but it's that threat of making him
Yeah.
proc. But I mean, again, I get it looking at the list. That's what I'm saying. Like, I could see Cyclops in there, but like realistically looking at it, I mean, he's replacing Claw or he's replacing Scorpion or something like that. And I don't necessarily
Right.
think that's the best for the deck. But again, I like what you're doing here. I like the way it's set up. You've got a lot of plays that can steal some wins. You've got the Professor X lockdown. You've got the Jeff for the backup in case you need it. You've got the Claw that can, grab that location and pump it up and put power in both lanes. People forget. I mean, yes, he's a 5/4, but he's also a +6. He's a 5/10. It's a
Yeah.
pretty big card overall, especially if
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna steal away one of those lanes that they forgot about. Um, and yeah,
Should
the only thing.
I have an idea.
Go ahead.
Anybody who runs this deck, if you win the Snap.fan Open, if you run the Thivo deck, I gotta put a. I'll give you my own personal interview on Snap.fan, and I'll put a $40 prize pool on it. If you can
So
win the
we got a
Snap.fan Open
bounty.
with this deck, yeah,
We got an extra bounty on top of all the
they have
other
a
stuff.
bounty with the Thivo deck because I do think that the
Yeah,
deck is that strong,
I
and
think it's good.
the stats have some information to support it. I'll leave
Yeah.
it lightly at
The
that.
the only
So
thing the only
just
thing to
be
watch
careful.
out for is Super Scroll. Don't let them sneak you out of their win with
Yeah.
a Super Scroll when they're
Hmm.
stealing your Dino plus
Super
your
Scroll is going to
Claw.
be
But
OP this
yeah,
tournament in general, but you can still navigate around it with all the affliction
yeah.
too.
So,
You
but no,
definitely
I like it,
navigate
man.
around it.
I like the deck. I'd love to see it in the tournament and see what it does. With a good pilot or something like that. But
Yeah,
overall, I mean, it looks pretty strong.
could be a lot of fun. Tourney prep for everybody is going to be very important over the next 24 hours from the time that we're recording this. So get ready. And I'll say pretty confidently, just be ready for Cosmo and be ready for Super Scroll. If I had to guess outside of Shang-Chi, those are going to be the 2 most relevant cards
And
this weekend.
be aware, Legion is a card.
Yes.
Check your
Legion is if
locations.
Storm on 4.
Don't yeah.
Warning, warning, warning.
Just
Okay.
just assume Storm on
Just
4,
be
assume
ready.
Legion.
Yeah.
If there's a limbo out, assume turn 6 there could be a Legion. Like
Yeah.
just keep that card in mind because it's gonna get a lot of people.
Yeah.
I've seen it a lot, which means a lot of people paid the 3,000 tokens or they're using their spotlights.
Yeah.
But just always remember when a new card drops, people are going to be trying it. And I think with Legion, again, like we talked about at the very beginning, not OP, but if you're not prepared for him, he's going to
Yeah.
steal 4 to 8 cubes without you realizing it.
I
So
think
be
I think
aware.
we're gonna see Legion pop up in these Thanos ongoing lists too. I would
Yeah.
not be surprised if that style and that combination won this weekend
Yeah.
also. Nothing would surprise me with Legion because of that tech to him. But I
Yeah.
think that it's going to be an interesting weekend. And come
Hmm.
Monday, if everything that we're working on in the background as well, comes to fruition as well, Monday is going to be a really good, interesting podcast. So come join us
Absolutely.
on Default Dan's channel on Monday night for the Monday night recording of the Snapback podcast. That's where you can find him. You can find me and him on Saturday at the Snap.fan Open, broadcasting, production, all of the above. Come join
Hmm.
the fun and party and experience over there, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. That's Default Dan. I'm It's Guest Gaming, which just feels weird to say I'm It's. It's Guest
Yeah.
Gaming here. Sure, you get the idea. It's an outro, but this is where we all say, hey, thank you. Please like, rate, comment, subscribe, share, do all the above for the Snapback podcast. The votes have closed for the Marvel Snap Awards. Fingers crossed if we win, maybe something something about this. We'll have a celebration and do something. I don't know, but we'll find out at SnapCon and we'll let you all know. So thank you all so much for hanging out with us today, this morning, Friday morning, the 28th of June, for the Snapback podcast, where you snap and we snap back. default dance and goodbye to all the lovely people.
Y'all take it easy.
I will say,
All
I
right.
think, you know, this weekend, as I keep thinking about it more and more and more, it's going to be potentially a pivotal, something just in my gut tells me it's going to be a pivotal weekend for Marvel Snap when it comes to deck archetype. Whatever wins this weekend, I feel like we're going to be stuck seeing for the next 3 weeks.